Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Parsha Shir. And we are holding by PARSHAS EMOR, but it's a very amazing week this week because there's a lot that is going on. We have a triple or quadruple header this evening. Number one, we have PARSHAS EMOR. Number two, we just had the other day Pesach Sheini. Number three, we have coming up the day of HaOmer, which will be tomorrow night and Friday. And then in the close distance already, right now we're in Sefiras, and we're coming very close to Shavuos. And all of these ideas, as we're going to see tonight, they're very much attached and they're very much connected to each other. So we'll try to put together the pieces as best as we can. In this week's Parsha, which is not a coincidence, every single year during the Sefiras the weeks that we are in right now, we always come to the Parsha. Svartem lachem yemacharas haShabbos. You have to count for yourself from the day after Shabbos. Miyoyim aviyachem es oimer atanufa sheva shabbosais temimais tiena. 7 complete weeks. And these 7 complete and pure weeks that we're going to count for ourselves, they bring us to the ultimate day, which is the day of Shavuos, that is on the 6th of Sivan, which is coming upon us very, very soon. There's a very famous question, and the question that is asked by Rav Dessler and others is that why is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to make a time of 7 weeks in which we're going to have to count from the leaving of Pesach, the splitting of the sea, until we're going to reach the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai? Because if you think about it, the following: HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt. He split the sea. He made signs, miracles, wonders. As we know that when we were walking through the sea itself, everyone was able to point with their finger and say, Zeh Keli Vanvehu, this is my God, and I will glorify Him. We're on the highest level that you could possibly imagine. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mission and the purpose of taking us out of Egypt was to bring us to Har Sinai and give us the Torah, then why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu not make it that He gave us the Torah at that very monumental moment in life, where we were elevated to the level of the highest of heights of prophets? We had survived the storms of Egypt. We had miracles all around us. Our level of prophecy was enormous. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu decide that He has to wait so many weeks before He's going to give us the Torah? Give us the Torah right now and right here. And yet we see it's not like that. There's 7 weeks that you're going to count. Sheva Shabbosais Temimais, weeks of perfectness, of purity. Weeks that one day is going to be connected to the next, 1 week to the next week, until finally we'll arrive at Har Sinai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not want to give us the Torah immediately. He wanted us to go through the process of counting these weeks for ourselves. Why is that? And Rav Dessler and others answer the following idea. It's true that when we went through the splitting of the sea, and we saw all the miracles and all the signs and all the wonders, it's true that we recognize that we are on holy levels of Kedusha, of Ruchnius, spirituality, Nevuah, and prophecy. It's true. But all of those levels that we received, we did not achieve and we did not attain for ourselves. They were given to us as a matana min hashamayim, as a gift from Hashem, that He wanted to show us the people, not that we might be right now, but the nation that we have an opportunity to become. We were slaves. We were coming out of Mitzrayim. We were on the lowest of lows. We were on the 49th level of impurity. And Hashem said, don't think that that's who you really are. And I'm going to give you an insight. I'm going to show you a flash of the greatness that is inside of your neshamas, your souls. And you are going to know what a Jew could become if they put their heart and their mind and their soul to it. And so in an instant of tremendous revelation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu lifted up all of the Jewish people. And we saw the Sheini, we saw the divine presence with our eyes, and we said, that's my God. I will glorify him. And we go through the splitting of the sea. The Egyptians drown. We sing our song. And the next thing we know, Hashem has pulled the rug out from under our feet. And he says, now you go and you earn it. Why did I do it? Because I want you to know you're not a slave. You're not on the lowest level of impurity. You're not living in the dungeons over there. You are a person who has the holiness of the neshama that comes from an Avram Avinu. You are a Jew that if you want, you could have a close relationship to Hashem. You are a Jew who has a neshama that craves to be in the Dalet Amos, in the presence of the Ribbono Shel Olam. And if you will begin to work, and you will begin to go through those Sheva Shabbos Timimos, those 7 weeks of purity, of holiness, of sacredness, and grow every step of the way, then you will be worthy of standing in front of me at Har Sinai. And that lofty neshama that you gained on your own will become the recipient of the greatest gift of all, and that is the Torah min Hashemayim, the Torah that Hashem gives to us. If a Jew wants to grow in his life, he has to know what he has on the inside. And the koiches, the potential, the abilities, the powers on the inside are almost to the extent that they are limitless. So much so that Rav Dessler asks, how could HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us a mitzvah to learn his Torah? The Torah is the mind piece of the Ribbono Shel Olam. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite. He has no beginning, he has no end, he has no middle. He never wearies, he never tarries, he never tires, he never gets weak. Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He, is infinite beyond anything that this world can understand. And the Torah is the mind of Hashem. That means the Torah itself is infinite. How can man who is so finite, we are confined by this world, we are boxed in to our ideologies, to our thoughts, to our struggles. How can the little tiny man of this world grasp and reach for the infinity of the Torah? How in the world does that work? And Rav Dessler answers so beautifully. And he says that since that every single one of us is created b'tselem Elokim, we all have the godly image inside of us. A piece of Hashem is inside of you. So that means that your neshama, your soul, which comes from the godliness above, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite, all-powerful, almighty, nothing holds him back, so too the neshama of every single Jew that is infused with that holiness of the Tzelem Elokim is infinite, is incredible, is awesome, is mighty, is big, and in reality, nothing can hold the Jewish neshama back from accomplishing anything that it wants to. One of the greatest Torah giants of generations ago was the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon was known to have a mind that was so fast. When he hit the age, I believe, of 40 years old, his hand could no longer write as fast as his mind was thinking. So instead of being able to write down in his own handwriting what was on his mind, he used to have a group of his talmidim, of his students, sitting in front of him, 3 or 4 at a time, and each one was assigned to write down different parts of what the Vilna Gaon said, and that's how they would write over all of the teachings that we have of the Vilna Gaon today. his commentaries on Mishlei and on different parts of Tanakh and on the Shulchan Aruch and beyond. We only have it because his students wrote it down because his mind was working so fast. The Vilna Gaon learned Torah, it's called Lishma. He learned it for the sake of wanting to understand the deepest meanings that are inside of it. The deepest understandings of every little mitzvah, every little halacha, every word that Hashem said. And he was so great and he was so lofty that very often there were malachim, there were angels that would come to visit him when he was in the middle of his learning. Sometimes even the neshamas, the souls of the previous generations, the soul of Avraham, of Yitzchak and Yaakov, they would come and they would say, "Oh, Vilna Gaon, let me teach you what that verse means over here." And even Eliyahu Navi, the great prophet Elijah, would also come and he would offer to teach the Vilna Gaon the secrets of Kabbalah, the secrets of mysticism, the secrets of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying. And to every angel, and to every neshama, and to every time that Eliyahu Navi came his way, he said, "Go away. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't want you to teach me anything. Anything that I'm going to learn in the Torah is only because I learned it in the Torah. Because I struggled, and I toiled, and I worked to understand. Because if I'm going to become anything in this world, I don't want it to be a handout that you just give me. I want it to be something that I earn on my own." Says the Michtam Eliyahu, Rav Dessler, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Klal Yisrael. When you left Mitzrayim, you were on a low level. And I lifted you up so you could see who you could become, what potential you have. But your potential only matters if you earn it on your own. And therefore you have to work and work and work. 7 weeks is a very long time. Most people cannot keep at something consistently for even 7 minutes, let alone 7 hours, let alone 7 days, let alone 7 weeks. But Hashem says, no, you could do it. Because that's the power that's inside the neshama of every single one of us. And that brings us to the holiday that we just celebrated on Monday, called Pesach Sheini. Pesach Sheini is a day called the second Pesach. Why is it the second Pesach? We don't have a second Sukkot. We don't have a second Shavuos. We don't have a second Hanukkah, a second Yom Kippur, a second Rosh Hashanah. Why do we have a second Pesach? And the answer is because the Chumash tells us that when it was time to bring the Korban Pesach, the sacrifice of the Passover offering, so there were groups of people that on their way to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle, to be able to bring the Korban, the sacrifice, they were walking down the road and they saw, Rahman al-Litzlan, there's a dead body lying on the road. And they began inquiring, does anybody know who this is? Is there a next of kin around here who's going to take care of him and bury him? Nobody knows anything. And so they said, we have no choice. It's called a mace mitzvah. A mitzvah to take care of the deceased that no one else is taking care of. So now the moment that you touch the corpse, you become tameh. You become impure. And when you are tameh, when you are impure, you cannot go to Yerushalayim, you cannot go to the Mishkan, and you cannot offer the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering. And so on the day that everybody was busy getting their Seder ready and bringing the Korban, these men came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Moshe, it's not fair. Chazal tell us, mitzvah goreres mitzvah, one mitzvah brings about another mitzvah opportunity. It's not mitzvah goreres avera that one mitzvah brings about a sin. And we did the mitzvah of taking care of this body. Now we became impure. And now we get punished that we can't bring the Korban Pesach. As they say in Israel, zelo fair. That's not fair. How could that work like that? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, you have a very good question. And they said the following words, Lama nigara, why should we be diminished? Why should we lose out for doing the mitzvah of taking care of the dead? Now we can't do this other mitzvah, which will make us even greater. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, let me find out. And he turns to Hashem, and Hashem says, they're right. Lama nigara, it bothers them so much that their spiritual light is going to be diminished. It pains them in such a way that they won't be able to perform a mitzvah the way that they want to. Give them the mitzvah. Yeah, but Hashem, they're tamei, they're impure, they can't. You're right. Pesach Sheini. Somebody who really wants to fulfill the mitzvah, and the only reason that he can is because he was busy doing another mitzvah, for that Jew who understands the value of the Torah, the value of the mitzvah, the value of his neshama, and connecting to the mitzvahs itself, for that Jew, we're going to give him another chance. It's called Pesach Sheini, second chance for the Jews that were impure. And then Hashem adds, and if they were far away, and because of circumstances, they weren't able to get to the Beis HaMikdash or to the Mishkan at the right time, and therefore they were unable to offer the Korban to Hashem, those people also will give them another chance. They're on the derech, they're on the way already. That's the way they want to go in. That's the path they want to take. They got a flat tire along the way. What could they do? And therefore, give them a chance. When a Jew recognizes that which is inside of them, when a Jew begins to appreciate the value of the mitzvahs that HaKadosh Baruch has given us, when a Jew is able to see the pristine opportunities that Hashem has bequeathed to us and nobody else, and it bothers him if he cannot do it, it hurts him if he can't be there, if he feels the gnawing absence in his neshama, if he's not going to be able to complete what he set out to do, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is someone who recognizes the koichos, the potential inside of himself. He sees the greatness and the grandeur in the Torah and the mitzvahs. That's the person. Give him another chance. And this brings us into the day which is going to come tomorrow night, Lag BaOmer. It is a very peculiar Yom Tiv. Now we know that in general we say that we celebrate on Lag BaOmer, and the reason is because Hilula the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it is the yortzeit of the great Tana Elokim, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Shimon Bar Yochai was the man who brought Kabbalah down to this world. He brought the Zohar down to this world. The fires of Torah surrounded him. And even though that is his yortzeit, which means he passed away on this day, Lag BaOmer, but he left over so much. We are so grateful and so honored that his Torah remains a part of Klal Yisrael. We celebrate the life of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai on that day. But if you look inside the Shulchan Aruch, you'll see that it seems to be that there's a different reason why we're celebrating on Lag BaOmer. And that's because of the story that we mentioned last week in the Shir of Rabbi Akiva and all of his Talmidim, his students. And we know the story was that Rabbi Akiva had a very large yeshiva, 24,000 students. And from Pesach ad Atzeres, within the Pesach to Shavuos, within the way that Chazal understand, within 33 days, all 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, they died in one shot like that. Now let's just think about Rabbi Akiva for one moment, so we can understand the magnitude of what this means, this total tragic devastation. Rabbi Akiva was a young man who was what's called an Am Haaretz. He was an ignoramus of the highest caliber and degree. He didn't know an aleph from a beis, nothing. He was a shepherd, and that's all that he did. He despised, at that time in his life, Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars. So much so, the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Akiva, after he became the great Rabbi Akiva, he was telling his students one time, you should know that when I was ignorant, I hated Talmidei Chachamim so much that if I would see one, I would want to bite him like a donkey. And the student said, a donkey? Rabbi Akiva, that's pretty harsh. How about like a dog? Maybe a little chihuahua, something like that. And Rabbi Akiva said, no. A dog, when it bites, its canine teeth only pierce the skin. But a donkey with its big donkey jaw, when it bites, it can crack and break the bones. So much that I despise the Talmidei Chachamim, the scholars of the world. I couldn't stand to see them, which is a very natural thing. When deep down inside you know what the truth is, and you know what is right, and you see people living that kind of a lifestyle, it usually bothers a person deep on the inside. He said, I wanted to break them like their bones, like the bones of that would break with the bite of a donkey. And then he meets his wife. And she sees, by the way, the great potential in Rabbi Akiva. And she says, you'll become my husband on condition you go to learn Torah and become great. And Rabbi Akiva and her get married. And she says, no, go. And he goes off. He's running off to yeshiva. And as he's along the way, he's probably asking himself, am I crazy? I don't know an Aleph. I don't know a Beis. I'm going to go to yeshiva. Where are they going to put me with the little kids? It's 3 years old. I don't know anything. And I did all this to marry this. What am I doing? And as he's walking, passes a stream. And he looks at the stream as he's walking by, and he sees a very fascinating phenomenon. He sees a rock. And he looks at the rock carefully, and he sees there's a hole in the rock. And he begins to wonder, how did a hole get into this rock? And he looks and he sees there's a drop of water dropping down. And he thinks to himself the following: how many drops of water did it take to make a hole in that rock? It can't be that this started dripping just today and suddenly there's a hole. It could have taken thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions and millions and millions of drops of the water onto the rock, but with consistency, every single day, all of the time, never giving in, never letting up, that water eventually bore a hole in that rock. Rabbi Akiva became electrified. And he said, Mayim, that water which is so soft can bore a hole in a rock which is so hard, because it kept doing it again and again and again, over and over and over, same place. There it goes, drop. Then al-achas kama v'kama, the more so the Torah, which is like fire. It's going to go into my heart, which is made out of flesh, and it will bore a hole out inside of my heart, and I too will be able to learn Torah if I go day after day after day after day, month, year after year, decade after decade. And he gets so excited, he runs off to the cheder, and he walks into pre-1A, and there's little kids 4 years old, and they're learning Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, and he says, what are you learning? He's a big man, he's 40 years old, they're little kids. And he said, what are you? And they start laughing at him. And they say, you don't know Aleph, Beis? I don't know anything, he said. Teach me. And they begin teaching him. And he masters the Aleph, Beis. Then he goes to the next classroom, teach me how to read. And they teach him how to read. And the next class, teach me how to read a whole verse. And he reads the whole word and then a whole verse. And then he begins learning all of the Chumash and all Tanakh. And then he climbs higher. Mishnah, Gemara, until he's sitting in the front of the great Rabbanim, the great rabbis of the generation. And he sits there for 24 years. and he becomes the great Tana Rebbe Akiva. He comes home after 24 years. His wife sees him, and the whole world is surrounding him. And she realizes that all of her Mesiras Nefesh, all of her sacrifice for the sake of her husband becoming the leader of the generation, worth every single year, every minute. And now he's building a yeshiva. And he's not just getting average guys. He's not getting the struggling guys. Rebbe Akiva is getting the best guys in the world. And he makes a yeshiva of 24,000 students. And for years and years and years, he's pumping in all of his energies, all of his guidance, all of his wisdom, all of his Torah, all of his efforts, all of his midas, all of his passion, all of his drive into these students. And then one day, out of nowhere, 700 students die. What is tragedy? What's going on over here? And he's getting involved with all the burials, all the funerals, all the levayas, all the shiva houses. He's comforting every parent. And the day is over, he catches his breath. Whew, it's terrible. He wakes up the next morning, another 700 die. And the next day, another 700. And now it goes on. And this is a very dreadful mourning period of the Jewish people. For 33 days, the students of Rabbi Akiva were dying in his Beis Midrash. And now it's day number 33. And Rabbi Akiva walks into his yeshiva, which was once bustling with the greatest Talmudic scholars of all time. The noise, the screaming, the level that was going on over there, the seeking of Torah, the seeking of Hashem was gigantic. And he walks into his Beis Midrash after 33 days, and it is so eeringly silent in that room, you could hear a pin drop. There's not a single person sitting in the Beis Midrash anymore. Says the Shulchan Aruch, on the 33rd day of the HaOmer, there was the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying, and therefore we celebrate on Lag BaOmer. You celebrate on Lag BaOmer because the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying? There were no students of Rabbi Akiva left to die. They all died. His whole life is in shambles. His whole mission, his whole dream, gone. It's washed away on the shores. There's nothing left. For that you celebrate. For that we're going to sit around bonfires tomorrow. We're going to shave, we're going to take haircuts, we're going to sing, we're going to dance. There'll be chasanas tomorrow night. Because the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. Yeah, there's nobody left to die anymore. So what do you do if you're Rabbi Akiva? Where do you go in your life? You are a failure with a capital F. Everything that you put your heart and your mind and your money and your energies and your efforts into, it's gone. It's not like you lost one student or you lost 10 students. You lost every single last one. 24,000 students, gone. Imagine you had a business and you spent 2 years preparing for that business, and you had to invest your own money. Very often people, they invest their life savings, and you went and you got other investors to come along with you, and you have all of your brochures and all of your plans, and you're showing everybody how the numbers are going to work out over here, and it looks like it's going to be the most successful business that you could possibly imagine. And you are so excited and you are so enthusiastic. You rent an office, you hire workers, you get all the computers, you get all the furniture. You walk in there the first day, wow, this place is amazing. It's going to be a gold mine. And in the beginning, it's going very well. The name is on the streets, everybody's calling, you're getting orders, everything's going great. But somewhere around 2 or 3 years after the business begins, something goes awry. You're not exactly sure what happened. The market changed. They're not interested in your goods anymore. There was some rumor out there that you weren't as honest as everybody said you were in business. And the next thing you know, it all falls apart. And there's nothing left. And from the 2 years of preparation to now 3 years later, 5 years of your life, it has now been completely destroyed. When you have to call the landlord and cancel your lease, break the lease, when you have to call all of the vendors and you have to tell them, I don't have any product left, and you have to pay a lot of money to be able to get yourself out of all those contracts, when you have to walk home and show to your wife and your children, I failed, I have nothing left, what do you do with yourself? I'll tell you what I would do. Probably take a bottle of something, vodka, whiskey, some kind of schnapps, go into my room, close the door, lock it behind me. Before I did, I would put a sign that says, do not disturb until informed that you're allowed to. And then I would just have a few drinks, crawl into bed, cry myself to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, probably do something similar to that as well. Rabbi Akiva had his whole life dashed on the rocks in 33 days. How long did it take Rabbi Akiva to gather his spirits, to garner his efforts, to be able to lift his head up high once again and say, it doesn't matter what happened? HaKadosh Baruch Hu works in mysterious ways. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is challenging me and testing me. I'm not going to crumble to the challenge. I'm going to be strong. I'm Rabbi Akiva. How long did it take? The Gemara says the following words, that they all died in one shot, and the Olam Shamim, the entire world, was desolate. There was no Torah learning of Rabbi Akiva's students. Until Rabbi Akiva came all the way to the south of Israel, and he began teaching new students. And who were they? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Meir Balanes, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. 5 new students he finds, and he teaches them all the Torah. How long did it take Rabbi Akiva to pull himself out of his misery to go to these 5 new students and believe in himself that Hashem wants him to rebuild the Torah that was just lost? Says the Arizal, you know when that day was? It was on Lag BaOmer itself. The day that his life came to a crashing halt. The day that he lost everything. The day that he said to himself, I must have done something wrong. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took everything away from me. Rabbi Akiva said, no, Yetzer Hara, you're not going to get me. I'm not going to despair right now. I'm not going to give in to you. No. I have the neshama of Rabbi Akiva. I'm the man that saw a drop of water on the rock and I realized the power of Torah. I was embarrassing myself in the room of the cheder with the little boys, and I grew and I grew and I grew and I became Rabbi Akiva. I know the power of the neshama. I know the power of the Torah. And this is just a test that you are putting me through right now. I am not going to stop. He gets up on that day and he goes off to the south and he finds 5 new Talmidim. Now, it couldn't be that he was like very popular. Like, wait, aren't you the Rebbe who's all of his students died? And maybe he encountered other students along the way. They said, no, we think we're good over here. We're fine. But he found 5 and they said, yes, Rabbi Akiva, if on the day that you lost it all, you want to rebuild it all, we're with you, Rabbi Akiva. And that's exactly what happened. And that is why Lag BaOmer, Haba Leinu L'Toiva, which will come upon us tomorrow night, that is the simcha. It's not the joy because the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. Yeah, they stopped. There's nobody else to die. It's the reaction of Rabbi Akiva. And the reaction of Rabbi Akiva is, a Jew never stops going, because he knows what's on the inside. He knows what Hashem made me of. My very fiber and my DNA is Tselem Elokim. I'm in the world of infinity. I'm in the world of no holds barred. I'm in the world of endless potential. But if I tap in, and I see what I have inside, and I recognize the greatness, and I don't let the world tell me otherwise, I am then going to persevere. All of these hostages that are being released, they should all be released, Be'ez Hashem. When you hear their stories, they walked into the dungeons of Gaza totally irreligious and secular. They didn't know what Shabbos was, what it meant to fast on Yom Kippur. They didn't know what tefillin was, what a bracha was. They didn't know what Torah was, nothing. And while they were there, they began to realize, they are trying to break us. Emotionally, physically, spiritually, faithfully, they're trying to break us. But you know what the Jews said over there in Gaza? In the tunnels, in the dungeons, in metal cages, while they're being tortured and beaten? I'm so much better than these people over here. And as much as they think they're going to break me, they're not going to make me weaker. On the other hand, I'm going to dig deep down inside of myself, and I'm going to find out what I'm really made of. And one by one, every single one of these hostages has stories of how they found Hashem in the darkness. They found Hashem in their weakest moments. It became their strongest moments. At a time when the whole world was worrying about them and davening for them, and hoping that the worst was not taking place, it was exactly at that time in their life, the lights of Kedusha, the radiance of the Sheina, the glory of the Torah, was coming to their eyes and their mind and their hearts and their neshamas. And then they get released, and their families don't recognize them. Not because they lost 46 pounds in captivity. Not because their face is a little bit more sunken in and their skin is more pale because they've been underground for the last year and a half. No. They don't recognize them because when they went into the tunnels of Gaza, they were secular. And when they emerged from the tunnels of Gaza, they are ma'aminim, they are believers in Hashem. The power that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put inside of our neshamas is infinite. Rabbi Akiva on Lag BaOmer shows us your strength is infinite. What you could accomplish, what you could do, as long as you never give up, sky's the limit for a Jew. As Rav Tzadok HaKohen says, Keshem she'adam chayiv lahamin ba'Hashem. Just like a person is obligated to believe in Hashem, kach adam chayiv lahamin ba'atzmai. A person is obligated to believe in themselves. And the more you believe in yourself, and the more you realize what you could accomplish, and the more you realize that you can overcome, and you realize nobody ever went through anything as devastating as Rabbi Akiva. And he went on, and he found new students, and he believed in the Torah, and he believed in the nitzchias, the eternity of the Torah, and therefore it was able to go on. Whatever it is that I have in my own life, whatever dark paths I have to walk down, whatever disappointments, frustrations HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends my way, don't let them stress you out. Rather, dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and realize inside this neshama is godless, is greatness. And maybe this thing itself is what's going to make me even greater. Rabbi Akiva goes down in history in so many stories throughout Shas, throughout the Gemara of Rabbi Akiva. He is the man of faith that never wearies, and he never gives up hope. We know the very famous Gemara at the end of Makkos. We just learned it in Daf Yomi. The rabbis come into Yerushalayim and they see it lying in ruins. Everybody starts crying. And Rabbi Akiva is smiling and laughing. And they said, Rabbi Akiva, how in the world are you laughing right now? And he asked them, and why are you crying? So they said, why are we crying? Because, look, the Romans, they came, they're celebrating in the streets, and the noise is so loud we can hear them from miles and miles away. They walked into Jerusalem, they destroyed our city, they destroyed our Beis HaMikdash. How can we not cry? And Rabbi Akiva said, that's exactly why I'm laughing. Because if that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does to Oivei Ritzaino, to those people that go against the will of Hashem, He gives them success and victory here in this world. Alachas kama v'kama, all the more so could you imagine what He's going to do to Oivei Ritzaino, to those that do the will of Hashem? Could you imagine? You see destruction, I see building. You see the enemies, I see the victory of Klal Yisrael. If we stay connected to Hashem, He cannot say no to us. We just have to stay connected to ourselves. We have to see the greatness and the glory in our neshamas. We have to believe in ourselves the way that we believe in Hashem, that just as Hashem is infinite, and just as Hashem is unstoppable, and just as Hashem can accomplish anything that He wants, you and I and everyone have touched the world of infinity. And we also are unstoppable when we put our minds to do those things. I want to leave you off with a story of a young man by the name of Yitzchak. He was a brilliant, brilliant young mind in yeshiva. In learning in the Gemara, he was the top of the class. When the Rabbi would give over a shir in Gemara, he would always ask the biggest questions. He would even sometimes stump the Rebbeim. That's how sharp his mind was. When he was somewhere in the beginning of high school, maybe 15 years old or so, he was a very bright mind, a big mind, and he had a philosophical mind. And he started having a lot of questions about Judaism and our faith and Yiddishkeit and Torah and the like. And he would ask these questions to the Rabbanim, to the rabbis. And they started getting a little bit nervous. Why is this kid asking these questions about how to believe in Hashem? Why is he asking questions about how do we know the Torah is true? Why is he asking questions about where is Hashem if you can't see Him? Why is he asking questions like this? He's such a brilliant person. His mind is good. Why is he asking these questions? And there were different Rebbeim that would spend time with him. And they would entertain him and they would answer all of his questions. And nevertheless, it didn't do any good. The more he answered, the more questions that he had. And the more questions that he had, the less answers you could come up with. And there's no answers, so he's getting very frustrated. But he was still learning very good. Very, very good. But then they noticed that unfortunately Yitzchak was going around to some of the other boys in the yeshiva and he was having these philosophical debates with them. Now most boys at 15, 16, 17 years old, they do not know enough how to ward off the questions of insecurity of emunah and faith. And so he was having a lot of negative effects on the boys in the yeshiva, unfortunately. So the Rosh Yeshiva called him in. He said, listen, Yitzchak, we love you. You're an amazing, amazing student. Your mind is like a mind that we haven't seen in years. But you've got some questions, and you keep asking them, and you keep asking them to the other boys in the yeshiva, and it's creating a weakness in their emunah and their faith as well. So we need to ask you a favor. You have questions, you come to us. You don't go to your friends in the yeshiva. It's not fair to them. Can you do that, Yitzchak? And he said, yeah, I could do that, no problem. Fine, says he'll do it. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and one kid comes to the yeshiva and says, Yitzchak he's doing the questions again. The debates is like 1 o'clock in the morning in the dormitories, and he's fighting it out. How do you know that Hashem exists? And we don't know what to do. So you call him back in. Yitzchak, you told me you're not going to do it anymore. I tried. What can I tell you? I've got questions. I got to ask questions. And she says, you're getting very close to getting asked to leave our yeshiva. Because if you're hurting the other boys, we can't have you here. He says, you know what? I have an idea. You're so brilliant in your learning. You're so brilliant in your Torah scholarship. I have a great idea. Why don't you take your favorite sugyas in the Gemara, which means your favorite parts of the Gemara from all over Shas, and you have chidushim, you have novel ideas and insights into these areas. Why don't you write a sefer, write a book with all of your chidushim, all of your insights? And you'll write it all down, and we'll help you with the editing, and we'll even sponsor that it should be published, and we'll be able to give it out to the yeshiva, and everybody will see the hard work that you have done. And so Yitzchak says, you know what, that's a great idea. I have a genius brain over here. I have a good mind. I have a lot of questions in the Gemara itself with a lot of answers. Let me do that. And he starts working feverishly, day and night and day, week after week, month after month. And by the end of about 9 months of working relentlessly on the sefer, it's ready to go to print. And the Rabbeim are amazed by it. They're giving him accolades and praises. Look what you accomplished. You're incredible. And they print the book, and he is so proud. He's a young man, and he wrote a sefer on complicated areas of the Gemara, and he has answers to his questions. Incredible. And although that the excitement lasted for a little while, it couldn't last for too long. And eventually his old philosophical questions and doubts began creeping in once again, and he started causing problems with the other boys in the yeshiva, and eventually, with great pain in their hearts, the Rosh Yeshiva had to ask him, Yitzchak, you're going to have to leave our yeshiva. You should go find a yeshiva that will deal better with these questions. I can even give you the names of a few, but it's not going to work here anymore. And one yeshiva led to another, and before you know it, Yitzchak is what is called off the derech of Yiddishkeit, no longer religious. Fast forward many years, there's another yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, and there's a young man in that yeshiva. His name is Shmuel, and Shmuel's in the middle of learning a particular thing in the Gemara, and he's going back and forth. He has a big question, and he cannot find an answer to this question. And he begins asking around. Nobody has a good answer. It's such what we call a bomb kasha, such a major question on the sugya. Nobody has an answer. So what does a young man do when he doesn't have an answer? He thinks, and if he doesn't come up with the answer, he begins looking on the shelf at all the books, all the Sefirim. Maybe somebody else asked my question, and he's looking, no. Pulls a small sefer off the shelf, and he looks in the index. Hey, that's what I'm learning. And he goes there and he says, that's my question. And he begins going through the whole thing, and he gets to the answer. And he says, it's an amazing answer, but I have a question on the answer. And he opens up to the front, and he looks at the author, Yitzchak, we'll call him Yitzchak Schwartz, and there's a telephone number there. He says, you know what? I'm going to call him. Let me call him up and ask him how he's going to deal with my question. So he goes to the phone, and he takes the number and he calls, and a woman answers the phone. And she says, yes. And he says, yes. Is Yitzchak there? And the phone goes silent. And he says, hello? Hello? And he hears faintly in the background, he hears the woman who answered the phone. She's weeping, she's crying. And through her tears she says, "Who is this?" And he says, "My name is Shmuel, I learned in such and such a yeshiva. I had a big question on the Gemara that I'm learning, and I found it in this sefer over here. And it says, Yitzchak Schwartz wrote it, and there's a number I'm calling, I wanted to speak to him. Is he available that I can ask him my question?" And she says, "Yitzchak. Yitzchak is my son. Unfortunately, he left the pathways of Judaism many years ago. We haven't seen him already in years." And he says, "I'm so sorry, miss. I didn't mean to cause you any, I'm sorry." She says, "I don't have a telephone number for him, but I have an address. I know where he lives. If you'd like to see him, you can go and knock on his door." And he takes down the address. And he begins making a calculation. From his yeshiva to the bus station is a certain amount of time. To catch the first bus to the next bus station is another amount of time. And to catch another bus from there to there, and finally to get to his neighborhood and then walk to the house, it's going to take him probably 2 hours to travel there and 2 hours to travel back. And he's wondering to himself, are the 4 hours of travel time worth taking off a whole day from yeshiva? So he goes to one of his Rebbeim and he tells the Rebbe the whole story. His question, he found in the sefer, the mother crying, the boy is no longer from, but here's where he lives. Should I go or should I not go? And the Rebbe says, who knows if you don't have an opportunity to save this man's life, you should go. And so the next morning he sets out, one bus after the other, 2 hours, finally gets to the neighborhood. Now he gets to a neighborhood somewhere in Israel, it's like projects. It's like squalor. It is so lowly, the buildings, he can't believe where he is. And he's got the address on the paper and he's looking, he finds the building. And he walks up the stairs. And he gets to the door. And he knocks on the door. And there's no answer. He says, Hashem, I traveled so far. He says, maybe I'm supposed to save this man's life. Please, Hashem, if he's here, let him answer the door. He waits. There's no answer. He davens one final tefillah, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if the man is here, let him answer. No answer. And he turns to start walking back towards the bus. And just as he's about to go down the first stair, he hears, Mize! Who is that? And he goes back to him and he says, Yitzchak, you don't know me, my name is Shmuel, I learned in a certain yeshiva, and I had a question in the Gemara, and I found it in your sefer, and I saw the beautiful answer that you gave, but I have a question on your terrace, on your answer. And suddenly the door opens up, and there's like a grisly man standing in front of him. Hair like this, clothes tattered, dirt and a long beard like this. The man looks like he's been on the streets. And he looks at him and he says, Ma hakasha shelcha. What is your question? And he pulls out the book. And he says, here's the Gemara. And suddenly Yitzchak is looking. And his mind begins working. And he said, here's the question that you ask. I have the same question. And they go through the question back and forth. And Yitzchak is getting into it for the first time in years and years and years. And they're arguing out what the question is. And he said, here's your teretz, here's your answer. And he says, I remember that answer. Wow, such an answer. And Shmuel says, yeah, but there's a question I have on your answer. And then he asks him the question. And Yitzchak gets stumped. And then they be going back and forth, and they're fighting it out. And at the very end, they come to a conclusion. They come to an answer, an amazing answer that answers everything. And Yitzchak is holding on to the Sefer, and he's caressing the pages. And he says to Shmuel, would you mind leaving this here with me? I haven't seen my Sefer in years. Would you mind leaving it here? And Shmuel said, no, not at all. It's yours. And he tells him, thank you. Thank you for coming. My Sefer, I haven't seen it in years. And Shmuel leaves, and he runs back to the bus station, and he takes one bus to another bus to another bus. He comes back to the yeshiva. And it's very late at night by the time he gets back there. In the morning he goes to his Rebbe and he tells him the whole story, and the Rebbe says, call the mother. Call the mother and tell her what happened. This will be a nachas for her. Call the mother. So he goes to the phone and he calls the mother. And she says, yes. And he says, hello, this is Shmuel again, I called. And again she starts crying. He says, no, I'm sorry, I just wanted to tell you what happened. I went to his house, I saw him, we spoke in learning for 2 hours. We went through the question, the answer, we came up with an amazing answer. She says, I want you to know that last night after you left, my son called us for the first time in years. And he said, Ima, Abba, and he told us the story how you came with the Sefer. He said, I miss you. I miss our home. I miss my brothers. I miss my sisters. He says, do you mind if I come home tomorrow? And we said, are you kidding? Through the tears I told him, Yitzchak, we've been waiting years for you. Please, come home. And this morning we were waiting. We were waiting for the knock on the door, and instead we received a knock on the door, and it was the Mishtara, it was the police. And they told us that they are sad to inform us, but our son was found lying dead on the floor of his apartment, clutching a Sefer in his hands and arms. And Shmuel says, Oy vey, I killed your son. I'm so sorry. And the mother says, no. You don't understand. You gave our son back his life. So many years without Torah, so many years without Gemara, so many years without his neshama. And in one night, you gave our son back his life, and that's the way he left this world. Please don't apologize. Thank you. We can never thank you enough. Our son died from doing tshuva and holding his dear, precious Sefer in his hands. The koyach of the neshama, the power of the soul that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to each and every one of us is so enormous and it's so big. Like a Rabbi Akiva, like those in Pesach Sheini, lo menigo, why should I lose out? And that says Rav Dessler, that is Sefiras HaOmer. I showed you who you are, now you get there yourself. And when a Jew will realize what he has inside, what he could accomplish, the greatness that he could reach, then you are grabbing onto the infinity of the Ribono Shel Olam, and nothing at all can get in our way from achieving the goals and the greatness and the glory that each and every one of us can, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants for us, for our neshamas to achieve in this world, and be'ezus Hashem, ad mei v'esim shana, and beyond, with the greatest gift of all, the reward that will be waiting for a Jew who used his koiches in this world to serve the Ribono Shel Olam. So as we say in yeshiva, Lag Sameach.